Thank you for watching. Today, what I would like to talk about is really what is a plant-based diet and lifestyle, and how it's different from a vegan lifestyle. I'm going to do it really quickly. Today, it seems like there are so many different types of diets that go with different types of lifestyles. So there's gluten-free, there's paleo, there's a ton of things there are people that just drink a ton of oil in their coffee. In plant-based diets are quite specific. There are different degrees of how strictly various people adhere to the diet, but I'll tell you what it is to me and the diet that I try to follow. With the caveat that when I deviate every so often. I really try not to, but it is about practicality ultimately. And if I'm, between a rock and a hard place, there's chances are that I will have a little sugar, even though I'm trying not to. So basically, to start with. The first thing a plant-based diet does not include are any animal products whatsoever. That means no meat, no chicken, no fish, and no other animals. Then also animal products are not included for the most part. So no eggs and no animal milks of any sort. The reason for that is, of course, the high fat content and the high protein content. And those two have a vast history. I'm sure that if you're watching this channel, you're probably already aware of the politicized and scientific history of both those macro groups, I guess. So I won't get into it, but there is an animal product that is sometimes included in a plant-based diet, and that is honey. So again, sometimes if people do look at alternative sources instead of white sugar, sometimes they will use honey in a plant-based diet. So then the second thing that you really try to moderate is your sugar intake and your refined foods intake. And so what that means is that the foods that I try to consume are minimally processed. Now, there's a certain level of processing that exists with pretty much every food. I have a Vitamix, and sometimes I literally put stuff in it and, put it through a process. Even washing an apple technically is a process. So there's a gradient there, of course, and that's why this is not really about perfection. There is no such thing as achieving perfection as far as a plant-based diet is concerned, but you strive for minimally processed foods. So if something is taken out of a particular food, or if something is added, they call it fortified, then you kind of look at that with a suspicious eye. So one thing that being plant-based involves is looking at labels. If you do have to buy a food that is processed, which you really do very little of on this diet, you really learn to read labels and to figure out one easy guideline is if you don't recognize the ingredient, if you don't understand a word, first of all, you always have your phone on you and you can Google it, or an easier alternative is to put it back on the shelf and look for a different alternative. And so that happens. One example of a product like that is bread. And so I buy a particular type of bread. It's Ezekiel, and it doesn't have any sugar, and it doesn't have an exorbitant amount of oil. And so, which brings me to my next point. So we said no animal products for the most part, no processed foods, or limiting the amount of processes that your food goes through. And then I try to avoid oil. I also, while I do eat nuts and avocados, I do try to moderate that amount to where I am not taking in an excessive amount of fat. And there is a huge split. Obviously, there are very smart and talented doctors that point out that fat is very important in the human diet. Once again, I am not saying you shouldn't have any fat. And in fact, this is just what I do and what plant-based diet means to me. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a person who is plant-based. So, and then the last thing, along with the refined product, so obviously that does eliminate most flours and really certainly eliminates white sugar. And so I really try to limit my sugar intake as well. There's a pretty good lecture on YouTube that I believe should still be available. It's called Sugar the Bitter Truth. And it really explains how sugar is processed in your body as if it is a toxin, and henceforth that it is a toxin. And I'm not qualified to agree or disagree. I just think it was a very interesting intro into that way of thinking. So I try to control all those things, and really what that leaves behind is that you eat a whole lot more vegetables, legumes, unprocessed grains, quinoa, rice, and a very small amount of minimally processed foods. Every once in a while, I'll have a piece of toast with avocado on it, for example, or something like that. A lot of plant-based recipe books also have recipes for, say, plant-based pancakes and stuff like that. I've honestly not had a chance to explore those too much, but that's something that I'm certainly not ruling out. It's something I'd definitely like to try. So that's it. That's what a plant-based diet means to me. Every person is going to have this personal definition of what that means to them. And really every person moderates the diet to match their individual needs. So if someone is also has a gluten intolerance, well, they might remove gluten from the diet. I don't think I have a gluten intolerance. I have no reason to think that I do. So that's not something I've looked into with my particular diet. And so I hope this helps. Hit me with a question and I might be able to answer it. I'll do my best. Thanks for watching.